Welcome back, friends. I think let's get talking on something about war now. I will discuss with you a battle in Central Asia that took place between the Soviet Union, the USSR, and Japan, which is known as the Battle of Khalkhin. Now, where is this place? It's in Central Asia and borders Mongolia, Russia, and China. At that time when this battle took place, Mongolia was part of the Russian sphere of influence. And the Japanese had occupied Manchuria. They had put in a puppet emperor, Puyi, in charge of Manchuria, and they called that state Manchukuo. Now the war machine, that is Japanese war machine, was headed by Emperor Hirohito. And he held a meeting with his staff, and they decided they needed some minerals and other things very desperately. And then somebody looked at the map and said, just as we see the horses here, they were shown the map of Russia, and they said there's a lot of land available there, and Siberia is the land and it is rich in minerals. So Hirohito gave the order to invade and occupy Siberia. So that is the start. The Japanese were wanting to capture a portion of Siberia for its minerals because they needed minerals desperately, and Japan doesn't have any minerals. They were, of course, had already occupied Manchuria, and they were getting all the minerals from Manchuria, like coal and all that. But that was not enough. So the war cabinet decided that they must have a battle with the Russians, with the Soviets, and they were confident of victory. Why? Because in the 1904-1905 battle between Russia and Japan, the Russians had been defeated. The Russian fleet, which had sailed all the way from the Baltic to the South China Sea, across the Cape of Good Hope, and partly through the Suez Canal, had at the Battle of Tushimo been annihilated. Admiral of the Russian fleet was captured, injured, and later repatriated to Russia, where he was sentenced to death by Tsar Nicholas II. Now, at that time, Tsar Nicholas II was in charge, but later on he commuted the sentence, and the Russians accepted defeat. Even in the land battle in close to Vladivostok, they lost Port Arthur. Well, gentlemen, that is the start. So the Japanese were very confident of their military superiority. They said we'll be able to beat and smash the Soviets. But the Soviets had a different man now in charge, and he was Joseph Stalin. Now Stalin came to know about the danger of the massing of the Japanese army on the Siberian border. And an initial foray was made by the Mongolians, which was at that time an ally of the USSR, but they were beaten back by the Japanese. Later on, the Japanese were also beaten back by the Mongols in a counterattack. But now, the situation was hotting up because Stalin was negotiating with Hitler for the non-aggression pact. At the same time, he was carrying out negotiating with the British and the French also. He was buying for time. And he didn't want to get involved in a battle in the East, so he thought the best thing is to give one blow to the Japanese so they keep quiet. And now at that time, the sad part was that there are no good generals in the Russian army because many of them had been executed in the famous purges of 1936-38, including the 7 comrades of Lenin. So the question arose, who will command the Russian army? And then the choice fell on General Zukov. Now this was a godsend opportunity. Zukov was a genius. He landed in Siberia and marshaled his forces. The Russian army was regrouped. It had a greater number of field guns and artillery as well as tanks compared to the Japanese. We didn't have that many tanks and guns, but the Japanese were confident they're going to win because they said we are more professional. Now the battle lasted for just about a month and a half, and Zukov used his famous tactics which he used later against the Germans. He mounted a massed attack with infantry supported by artillery and the tanks coming in from the flanks. The Japanese army was surrounded and annihilated. Japan, I think, lost about 15,000 dead and the Russians had 10,000 dead. But it was a stunning blow to the Japanese. And when the War Council met, they were in a quandary what's to be done because they had been defeated by the Russians. There were some hawks in the War Cabinet who wanted the battle to continue in Siberia, but then a decision was taken that let things go as it is, and a treaty was signed with Russia, which Japan honored till 1945, in which they assured they would not attack the Soviet Union come what may. So Stalin had his eastern flank secure and he could transfer his troops to the western front to fight the Wehrmacht. Now this battle was very severe and swift. The Japanese were taken unawares by surprise of the ferocity of the assault mounted by the Russian army. And of course, Marshal Zukov, Gregory Zukov, was not an ordinary general. This was the tactics he perfected here in this battle, which he used very successfully in the Western theatre against Germany. Now, after the battle was over, a meeting was held in the Imperial Cabinet, again presided by Hirohito, and it was decided that what we will do is we will look for resources in Southeast Asia. And we won't go into Siberia, with Russia, where they had already signed a peace pact. And they had at that time decided that if we got to succeed in the East, Southeast Asia, we were to annihilate the American fleet. That is how Admiral Yamamoto was tasked with the plan to destroy the American fleet, and the attack on Pearl Harbor was planned. It took them 2 years to plan that attack, and then they launched it in 1941. But in the meanwhile, the Japanese were hard pressed for resources, and they had lots of sanctions put on them. There was a trade embargo, and ultimately a time came when they had only a week or 10 days worth of fuel left, and they had no choice but to attack the American fleet. But gentlemen, in case this battle had been won against the Russians, the attack on America may not have taken place. But that's part of history, and this is one of the very famous battles which has been fought, but it is not that publicized, mainly because the Western powers were not involved in it. So gentlemen, this is the end. I have to tell you about this small battle which lasted about less than 2 months, but in terms of ferocity and casualties, it has a unique place. The Japanese were badly beaten, and after that they didn't want to fight the Soviet army. Hence they honored their agreement until the Russians broke it in 1945 when they launched their sad assault after the Yalta Conference in Manchuria and defeated the Chinese, captured their arms, the Japanese captured their arms, which they handed over to Chinese communists, and with those arms Mao Zedong could win the war against General Chiang Kai-shek. So gentlemen, war is a very interesting subject, and I thought I'll give you an idea about this battle in the East between the Soviet army and the Japanese army, and the Japanese army was defeated. I hope you like this video, gentlemen. Share with your friends. Come back for more. In the meanwhile, I hope you will like this and become part of my family. God bless and take care.